It's Tuesday on Your View. Welcome to the show. I am Muriah Afolabi Brown. As always, I have the ladies. We're all in green today. You have a touch of green. Hello, Waike.
Hello.
Good to see you.
Nimagon has a touch of green.
Yes, so it's a greeny day. How are you doing, Waike?
Yes, so, fine. First, I want to tell you that they have started putting stones on our road.
Wow, that's that bad one or the
bad one, all.
Oh wow!
Even our own. They say I'm just praying that they tie it. You know, I just drove semi-smoothly over the road. I was like, hey,
that's your bad road. Why they are fixing it? In fact,
if they actually tie that road, you see, I will love that Kwabiodun forever. I will love.
We'll do a party for you guys.
You just do the right thing.
That even me, I know the pain that my car goes through and going to your house. Like. I'll just come and visit you once I know that they're
going to your own is once in a blue moon. My own is every day. I have to pack back. Man, my car.
I'm happy for your communities. That's fantastic.
People in that area, they will love him if he ties those roads. Because we have suffered 8 years.
Wow.
In fact, more than 8 years.
Wow. That's fantastic news.
And
how was traffic? No issues?
There was traffic today, but it was not because of the road.
Okay. How are you doing, Nima?
I'm fine. Thank you, ladies, for my birthday gifts. So now my other number is now active for those who have been trying to call. Yes, it's active.
Is that your business line or what?
Yes, the regular one. So that's the WhatsApp line, business line, everything line. Can call me now. Those who have been shouting, why is your phone off?
You know, you ladies, you delegated me to call Nima's husband to find out what she wants. And I called him. No, I sent a text. Then I was now afraid that the text I sent went to Nima's phone.
I wish he had.
I quickly called the number. Is it you? I've seen the text. I was about to reply you. He didn't reply me for like 24 hours. Then said, oh, I think she would like a phone.
Right.
So Nima has been fighting the poor man since.
Yes.
Are you for real for telling us that? Please, I beg. It was.
Yes, we had a conversation. And he called again. I was like, but I already told you because I want to buy this, and just do it for me, and that will be all. So he now kept quiet, and he kept saying, "God, miracle will happen." So yesterday when I got, I was like, "So you have something? You have done this before, and you are doing it again." So he said, but you know your people now, I don't want to offend. I said, but me and you were in the same house, don't keep secrets.
I'm happy you like it.
So I must say thank you. And I want to say happy birthday to my client and friend. I've been with this lady for a while now. She's been through it all. When you say domestic violence, abusive marriage and all that, and she's fighting through. You know, she's not had access to her children, but she's not giving up. She's using every procedure in the book. And I hope that, that this system in Lagos State avails her, because this now is in Lagos. We're in the Lagos courts. Her name is S.A. Igweboike Major. I love her. I've seen her from that, the first time I met her, locked out, vulnerable, scattered, disabled, to the kind of woman I see now. Even myself, I'm inspired looking at her. Happy birthday, S.A. May you achieve everything that you lay your hands on.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Happy birthday.
And you'll be successful at this as well.
So, as I said yesterday, I have started my Yoruba classes.
Thank God.
This is our human pain. I wasn't even paying Haman that complained that about my Yoruba the other day. So I've started Yoruba classes, and I can't wait I'm going to host the show one day, maybe this time next year, fully, completely Yoruba.
Inshallah.
And you will help me to translate.
You will be alienating.
No, she'll translate. She'll translate for me.
Okay.
So that's my goal. So I've started proper Yoruba class, not the street Lagos Yoruba.
Then I think
proper
if you're going
Yoruba.
to do that, there should be 4 people on set.
Okay.
You that will be speaking Yoruba.
The translator, my translator.
Your translator.
Yes.
Obiajulu will speak Igbo and
Mariam will speak Hausa. So that was 6 people on set, because they have to translate Mariam.
Nima will be the translator now.
Okay, we'll plan it.
Maybe when we resume our usual panel again.
We'll see how that goes. But it's nice. I mean, I must not in any way. I have to get this proper, not the street Yoruba, the right Yoruba. And I want to really, if I want to start teaching it at some point, because I'm very good at.
Do you have a Yoruba Bible?
Somebody told me to get it yesterday.
That's the
I'm going to get a Yoruba Bible. I'm going to get
the Quran that made me speak so many languages.
I'm going to get a Yoruba Bible. In fact, after the show, I'm going straight to buy a Yoruba Bible, and then I'm very good at Amiohun. That one I can easily do. I can read, because my teacher in Corona taught us very well Amiohun. But it's just that getting the right vocabulary. I need to get that right. Anyway,
it's the accents.
Learn to pray in
intonation.
Yoruba. When you learn, because reading it is different from speaking. You know, you have to learn.
I can read it.
Once you learn to pray, as in say the things you want.
It's really the intonation, it's the accents that confuse me.
Okay, let's go on the break. It's Tuesday. We're going to go through the front pages of the paper. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Right, we're going to start with The Nation. Amechi reps in face-off over $33 billion Chinese loan. Banks ration forex as dollar scarcity bites harder. Governor's envoy attacked with pistol. Oshamale, DG-PGF, that's the DG of the Progressive Governors Forum, being used by cowards. Bayelsa Governor Diri appeals sack, and NBS inflation now 12.82%. Okay, let's start with story.
The major headline.
The major headline. Let's start with that.
So the Minister for Transportation was with the House Committee on protocol and agreements, and he kept on defending this Chinese loan that all of us are now afraid of, because, you know, the House Committee has exposed the certain grey lines in the contract, and, you know, they're insisting that, you know, we signed the contract without properly seeing the terms. And that sovereignty clause that, you know, puts settling issues at disputes and puts the arbitration court in Hong Kong is something that is confusing to them. With a country like China that, you know, has such powers across its territories, we cannot have it in Hong Kong. We have other contracts. According to the Chairman House Committee, we have over 500 bilateral loans agreements across the world as a country. And we should, with the P&ID experience, I am afraid for the Honorable Minister for Transportation, because when
hot topic. Let us just focus on that. But according to the papers, though, according to what the chairman has said, we all agree that these, because according to what the minister was saying, that these are normal clauses in these kind of agreements. That these are normal clauses that are signed where you have these sovereign clauses in these kind of agreements. However, what the chairman was worried about, that even though as a weak economic country, the clause must be very, very clear. So we know what is it, what exactly, it was too ambiguous. That was the issue.
My own thing is, why is he saying don't investigate?
Don't question that you won't get
nothing to hide. You know, if hold on, if everything is above board, this is the contract. Go through it. Don't tell me. We have a right to know.
What Amechi was saying was that, because I think the idea was to get 33 billion. So far, we only have secured 1.6 billion. They want to get more loans for the Lagos-Calabar rail. He said, if you keep investigating, we will not get that additional loan, because we need money to do these infrastructure projects.
It's desperation. We can't be desperate and be clear. If we are seen as desperate, of course, the person with the higher hand will get the better part of the contract. We must see where.
So the question is, are we desperate or not? Yes or no? Do you have the money to pay?
Who they cry, they see roads.
Listen, do you have the money or not? That's the question.
Did you raise money for the Minister for Works for some more roads within the country using our own internal mechanism?
And then
the one we want to go and collect our
as I said, it's not our hot topic. Let's move on.
It depends on what the desperation will cause. Yes. It is not us that will suffer. It is our children's children.
We get that. We get moving on to Daily Sun. We need to make it a hot topic, because I think it's debatable. There are two sides of this story.
We need money, but we are not that desperate.
Moving on to Daily Sun. Federal government rises to save Nigerians in Ghana. Hiccups compliance as WASI begins. I remain Bayelsa governor despite tribunal's judgment, says Diri. Flawed. NEMA gives Imo Abia communities quit notice. Let's talk about Nigeria and Ghana.
Yes, so finally, our Minister for Foreign Affairs, Geoffrey Onyama, had addressed the issue that we took yesterday on the front page of Nigerians in Ghana and the $1 million trade agreement. So he says, yes, he understands the Ghanaians only dealing with retail side of trade in Ghana. And, you know, we've gone with an agreement because it contradicts the ECOWAS treaty. They've gone and had an agreement with Ghana, and that, you know, they didn't know that that particular law had been invoked again. So he has admitted to the sovereignty and, you know, the laws of Ghana and how we are getting ways to bypass it. I hope that they can get that bypass, because
he has said that they're going to recall the commissioner in Ghana, and they're going to call the commissioner, the ambassador to Ghana, from Ghana in Nigeria.
Okay, let's move on to the Punch. Chinese loan, I think we discussed that. Terms dangerous, says reps. FG confirms sovereignty clause. Human interest story, how herdsmen killed my fiancé and kidnapped me, or your female farmer. Ogun pastor blames evil spirit for impregnating 2 sisters. 2.2 million voters pick Edo governor September 19th. Uniglag increases security presence as Shoyombo resumes. Diri to appeal as tribunal sacks Bayelsa governor orders fresh poll. If I respond to PGF DG, it's like fighting a pig, says Oshomole. Scarcity disrupts banks, IOCs, telcos. This is your Oshomole people, eh? Let's just find it. Let's start with human interest story.
Because he's calling them pigs. I read both. I read the headsman and the...
He was talking after his meeting with the president. He was being asked about the DG, PGFs, the Progressive Governors Forum's comments on him, and he now said he can't be joining issues with him. That it's like talking to a pig. That what made him is not the fact that he was a NLC chairman, he was a textile executive for many years. That's what made him, not because he was a president or a chairman of NWC.
He said the pig is dirty. That he can't use his khaki garment to go and fight with the pig.
Can we talk about a human interest story right here? These political stories, I'm not interested. This woman that...
I actually watched the video, and it was really sad. She was coming back from the farm, and the herdsmen stopped them. The boyfriend, the fiancé, tried to escape, so they shot at him, shot his head. She said she was trying to hold his head, but the car was going out of control. Anyway, they came. They took her out of the car, tied a rope around her, and said to pull her with the rope. They had time to take the boyfriend's phone from him. They took her in the rain. They had to cross a river, and then they called her father. They used the boyfriend's SIM card to call her father, and they asked for 50 million. The story doesn't say how much they agreed for eventually, but then they let her go. But the story was really harrowing. If you watched it, it was a harrowing experience.
Let's move on to Vanguard, because I have a similar story that is very painful also. Vanguard, let me talk to Vanguard. Bayelsa split tribunal annuls Governor Diri's election. FG to spend 12.6 trillion in 2021. Over 20,000 Nigerians employed for Lagos-Ibadan rail project. Cowards in APC using PGF's DG to abuse me, says Oshomole. Southern Kaduna leaders want money for peace, says El Rufai. And COVID-19 FG to resume international flights. I'd like to take 2 stories in Vanguard. First is the story that actually, it didn't make the front page, but I thought it was important for us to give this story an opportunity. There's a young lady that was murdered. Her name is Charity Ngozi Ezi. She used to live in Abuja. She went to Enugu. She was studying for UTME. Her father drives a bike. He drops her every single day to study in the primary school. He found the next day that day she didn't come back, and they found her body half naked, bruised, killed, and raped. They reported to the police. They made arrests. They arrested 3 men. Unfortunately, they were later released. And these 3 men have been taunting the mother, Juliet Ezi. They see her in the market. They say, nothing can happen to me, that that will be released. The woman is here crying for help, especially asking that the Enugu state government should please intervene to ensure that these boys are rearrested and they are properly tried. Because obviously her daughter needs justice. Yes. And these men, they keep taunting her each time. She sees them every single day when she goes to the market. And that in itself is a horrible story. I hope that they took the sample that they should take, so that, they did not just bury and kill that case. The other story I wanted to take in Vanguard is the Southern Kaduna. The governor has said that he will not pay to appease criminals. And what he's saying is that for the past 20 years, past governors and governments have been paying these Southern Kaduna leaders who have actually been initiating and igniting fueling the fire in the Southern Kaduna killings. So he is saying that when he came into government, he stopped paying that money, and he told them that those who are fueling the fire of the killings will be persecuted. He had a meeting with Khan, and they had agreed.
I listened to the radio today, actually. They said 4 years ago, he actually said he was paying the... 4 years ago, he gave an interview on a particular TV station, and he said he was paying them to stop the killings. Yes. So he has now changed. Not that he didn't pay.
Okay.
Not that
at some point he had paid.
Stop paying. So that's.
So I guess the issue is not paying. So, but why would you be killing people just because the government is not paying? According to them, they don't have jobs to do, and every month they get a certain amount of money from the government
for peace to reign.
Yes.
If we know the elements, set them up and get them arrested, why should we pay them?
Okay, let's move on very quickly now to the Nigerian Tribune. Let's find a story we've not taken at all. COVID-19 tests a must for international flights as they resume August 29th. who has a story.
So the Minister for...
Can I dance first?
Please, you're happy.
Hey, my daughter will come. Oh.
Okay, I beg you. Yeah, this week I said, you know, at the presidential tax, you know, on COVID-19, addressing us, saying that, you know, flights will resume August 29th, and that, you know, the same protocol for local flights when they resume will be followed alongside a week notice. Online, filling your health details online, also giving a week's notice of your COVID test results online as well, within 5 days before your flight.
We have to
a lot of protocol, Sha. There's a story I really wanted to take.
Which
one?
Because our research,
necessary.
Our Raw Material Development Council has researched on a drug that will be produced locally for diabetes now, and you know, using things that grow freely amongst us, which is our groundnut. You know, they say it contains a particular substance that balances well and takes care of the lack of insulin.
Okay, we have to run, but Tribune did a report saying that we are spending 10 billion naira for operations of 4 refineries that have not worked in a whole year.
Yeah.
Nigeria will healthy. Let's go on a break. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. So recently, many states eased lockdown caused by the coronavirus. Many they reopened churches, mosques, and sometimes nightclubs. I think, YK, you've been allowed to open, right, since last week?
Yes.
Right.
No, not the club, just the bar.
Just the bar, right. So the system is gradually returning to normal. However, many are wondering if the ease was necessary, as the number is still not declined. In some cases, it's still rising. Joining us on the show is the National Coordinator, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show this morning. So,
oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about the ease of lockdown so far. I mean, across the country, we've seen life return back to normal gradually. Schools, SS3 pupils are writing the exams. Churches have reopened. Some places of work have actually opened fully. In your view, what has been how have you been able to review the ease so far? How has it been nationally? What kind of reports have you gotten so far from all the various states as regards how people have either complied or not complied with all the various guidelines provided?
Well, first of all, to start off, we haven't really eased completely when you think of it. The schools have only partially opened just for the purpose of exams, which is just for a few weeks, after which they will be closed again. A lot of the aspects of our day-to-day work is not back to normal. So, for instance, we still have a curfew 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., even though some may not necessarily observe it, but nevertheless, it's still there. I think what's important is for us to continue to make sure that those non-pharmaceutical interventions we talk about, so the wearing of face masks and physical distancing, hand hygiene, good respiratory etiquette, etc., are seriously complied with. Because if all of us continue to do those measures, there is absolutely no reason why we can't continue opening up. Because this is a respiratory viral infection. We know how it transmits. We know how it goes from one person to another. We are, at the PTF, we continue to be quite concerned with the degree of compliance to non-pharmaceutical interventions. In fact, we are reaching out now to the state governors to continue to emphasize the need for effective community engagement and mobilization right down to the grassroots level to make sure people are aware that this risk is still there. As you said quite correctly, COVID hasn't gone away, far from it. One of the reasons why our positivity rates are sort of coming down, the number of positive cases we're getting is slowly coming down. It's most likely because of the level of testing. We're still not testing enough. We are still testing quite a small percentage of the population. But we do have other strategies, including concentrating on what we call hotspot local governments. We've now expanded the number of hotspot local governments to 20. And this is across about 8 or 9 states. Right. And we will continue to emphasize and prioritize these local governments and make sure that a lot of testing is being done. Right. People that are positive are being identified and isolated.
Okay.
Yeah, you had said a few months ago that by July you hope to have conducted 2 million tests. And as at today, it's only 350,000 tests. What has gone wrong? What can you do to increase the tests so that we really know what our status is in Nigeria?
So you're definitely right. So the responsibility for testing is primarily that of sample collection is the key part, and sample collection is primarily the role of state governments. At the moment, we have expanded working through NCDC. NCDC has the primary responsibility when it comes to surveillance and testing. We coordinate them. But when we talk about testing and laboratory capacity, we've increased the number of labs to 64. At the moment, we're doing about 3,500 tests on average every day, but our capacity is 10,000. And one of the key reasons why we are not testing enough is because of the very low demand at the moment. People are just not coming out to test at all. When we go to, one of the reasons why we get to the 3,500 is because we have to actively go out and seek out people for testing. So I think when it comes to testing, it's really a joint responsibility between both the federal and the state governments. Yesterday at the press briefing, I did mention that we will be reaching out to the state governments because we've recently given them funds to enable them have better surveillance. Part of those funds are supposed to be used to open up sample collection centers across the local governments, particularly in facilities that we call high throughput facilities where they have a lot of patients, so that we can have improved access, because we know not only are people not coming out to test, but sometimes they have difficulty in accessing testing. Whereas if you bring the sample collection sites right down to their villages, to their local governments, it should be easier for people to test.
Exactly.
But it's only by testing widely that we would know the extent of the problem and be confident that when we relax some of these restrictive measures, things will continue to be safe.
Dr. Sani, I wanted to go at you when you said that, you're willing to test, but people are willing to show up. But you got to the point and said, for some people it is Herculean an Herculean task to get to get those tests done. Because I went through rigors to get my or retest done twice. And I know what it costs. The crowd of people in Lagos they were not even able to cover them. So I would ask that you have a strategy. For instance, in the local governments that are high risk that you mentioned that you have increased now, what exactly is the plan to get people in those areas that that since you can highlight certain local governments as those places where they have very high, number of spread? What are you doing to increase tests in those particular areas such that people don't have to go on the website, wait for days to get tested and even spread and, die before their tests are done?
There is absolutely no doubt that when it comes to access to testing, things have improved. We know that from the number of laboratories we have. We know that from the number of sample collection sites. Even yesterday, we put out the numbers for those sample collection sites. So sample collection sites are not difficult to access. Yes, information is important. It's important for people to know where to go and test. But a lot of the facilities, increasingly we are now introducing sample collection in some of the federal medical centers and teaching hospitals. Lagos certainly doesn't have a problem when it comes to access to testing, because Lagos continues to test more than any other part of the country. If other states were testing at the rate that Lagos is, so Lagos and the FCT, at the moment, we have a target of 1% of the population being tested. That's our target. That's how we got the 2.1 million. Lagos has reached 50% of that target. FCT has reached 50% of that target. 7 of the local governments that I talk about, 7 of the 20, are in Lagos. So when it comes to access to testing, Lagos is not the problem. It's other parts of the country. And even with other parts of the country, it's actually the issue of information, knowing where to go and get that information. Even yesterday, we provided those telephone numbers. Even yesterday, we did make it clear that the state emergency operation centers are the key. But let me re-emphasize this again. When it comes to sample collection and access to testing, it's a state responsibility. The role of the PTF is to make sure that the states know that, and also to help them, to assist them when it comes to funding, which we have done recently, because we provided almost every state with 100 million, and there's an additional 1 billion that will be coming to each of the 32 states. Already the remaining 4 or 5 had funding. So you can take a horse to a river or whatever what they call, but you can't really force it to drink. Force it. People are not. The demand is very low, and that's where the risk communication and community engagement is essential.
So sometimes when we see these kind of problems, we need to always domesticate the solutions. So people won't ordinarily come forward. My question to you, sir, is how are you engaging this local government? Because it seems that they are almost lackadaisical to this issue of testing. They've moved on. Many of them seem to have moved on. So how do we domesticate the solution? Where do we begin to go door to door? Do we begin to ask people to go to the churches now that they're going to churches? Should we go to churches and start testing people? What solutions can we provide to help the local government and the state to ensure that testing is done?
So it's not just about getting the message over. It's also about the messenger. So if I tell you that you need to test, you may not necessarily believe me. You may not necessarily go and have a test. But if it's your pastor, if it's your traditional ruler, if it's your community leader, you are more able to. You're probably going to be more convinced. So we are changing the message in addition to changing the messenger. And the message is, yes, if you get COVID now, the majority of people will be fine. But the issue is when a vulnerable person gets it, your loved one, your parents, your grandparents, people that you love, if they catch it, the risk of death is very high, up to 18% in Nigeria. Almost 1 in 5 will die if you're above the age of 65. The majority of those that have COVID in Nigeria are between the ages of 20 to 39. These are the very people that do not take care when it comes to non-pharmaceutical interventions. They don't wear face masks. They are the ones that are least likely to be symptomatic, and they are also the ones that are most likely to transmit. So we are working together with the traditional rulers, the Council of Religious Leaders, and also the state governments working right down to the grassroots. We have over 18,000 volunteers in about 17 states. We've mobilized people from other parts of the health sector, including the polio structures, for instance, up in the north. We are also working through market women, through Association of Road Transport Workers, to push out that message, not only for testing, but also for wearing masks and ensuring that people have the message to be able to protect themselves.
All right, let me take this call.
This is collective responsibility. It's not really just the PTF alone. As you said, this is a collective responsibility. It's all of us. If we test widely, today, if we go to a test to a state and we get the cooperation of the state government and we test, and there isn't any COVID, we'll open up. Okay. It's the fastest way of opening up.
Let me take this call for you. Good morning. Are you there?
Yeah, hello. Hi,
Thanks for calling. Good morning.
Yeah, please, I have a concern. I actually went to Yaba Isolation Center for testing last week, Tuesday. Okay, I had ear infection, which apparently went down to my throat. And it was really painful. So I didn't know, nobody is going to take me in the hospital. So I had to go and, do COVID test first. Okay. As I speak to you now, the test is not out. It's so sad that what if the pain was so bad that, it can even kill me. I still have to wait up until this time now, and the test is still not yet out. No one has called me from the facility. Nobody has told me anything. I can't go to the hospital to get evaluated. It's so sad.
Thank you very much.
Nima had that same problem.
Nima had that same experience. So that's like a local problem.
I wanted to build on it with him that, yes, you've given these states the funds that you mentioned. How are you making sure that, sample, what is it called? Whatever they need to take samples and test those samples are, bought and used. For instance, how many days should it take? How many tests can a person get before the person is certified free? Because I got the second test, and the third test, I never got a result. So they just went with the number of days and said, you're fine. So how many days do you need exactly? What are you doing to ensure that the NCDC or the centers in question, that the people working there are doing the right thing in partnering with the state, so that they're not just disposing funds without doing the right thing?
So the process of, so first of all, let me start with the earlier speaker, and of course, we're sorry to hear about you, the pain you've been having. the NCDC are currently piloting an electronic platform to enable people to access their results straight away after testing. So you don't even need to be called, etc. I know that there are elements of operational inefficiency relating to results because they usually prioritize positive results. So if you have a test and it's positive, they will prioritize phoning out and transmitting that information. But I do agree, a negative test is just as important as a positive test, especially for somebody who wants to access treatment. Although as a clinician, I would say if you have ear infection, COVID does not cause ear infection. So for any decent doctor, they should know that really these are not the symptoms of COVID, and you should have been given access to medical care straight away and treated. You really shouldn't have to wait for a COVID test in order to have access to treatment. So when it comes to the issue of repeat testing, we've made it very clear. With COVID, if you're positive, if today you get COVID, you do not need a clearance test. In other words, you do not need to have a repeat to make sure it's cleared. We follow the symptoms and also the duration. If you don't have any symptoms and you've had 14 days of isolation, full stop, that's it. You can come out into the community because there are a lot of studies that have shown beyond 10 days, the virus is no longer viable. Right. And even if it is picked up on PCR, because PCR looks for the presence of viral nucleic acid, so that can persist in the nose, in the respiratory tract for a much longer period of time. But the virus is not viable in itself. Okay. So you don't need a repeat PCR. If you get a repeat PCR, you could end up having a repeat PCR that's positive for weeks, and you still be tied down at home, etc. All right. Symptoms, if you don't have symptoms and you're well, after 14 days, you can go back to your normal life.
Let me go on a quick break, sir. We'll be right back. Thank you.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. So we still have the National Coordinator, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu. Doctor, very quickly, I know we hear about a saliva-based test being approved in the US because it's cheaper and faster. Is there any possibility for us to get this mode of testing in Nigeria as soon as possible?
So the NCDC has been validating a number of rapid test kits. The outcome of that will really determine whether or not we'll be using antigen antibody-based test kits. In the past, we haven't, because the performance of the test kit has been really suboptimal. And that's why a lot of countries don't either. PCR is far more sensitive. And if you're doing a screening, what you want is to be able to catch as many positives as you can. Whereas with the serological test kits, the sensitivity is about 60%. So in other words, if you have 10 cases that are positive, on average, the kit will pick up only 6, and you will have 4 that are reported as false negatives exactly when they should have been positive. But as I said, technology is moving very quickly, and we'll await the results of the validation of the various test kits by the NCDC, and then we'll take a decision.
Doctor, you mentioned earlier that after 14 days, after a COVID test, and the person has isolated for that 14 days, the person is fine. You don't, so no need for retesting. But I went after 21 days of my initial test result, and I did another test, and it was still positive, even though the information, everything had been given. So what explains that?
Yes, so that's what I said earlier on. So PCR looks for the presence of viral nucleic acid. It doesn't look for the presence of a virus that is alive. For you to know whether the virus is alive or not, you need to put it on a culture media. There have been studies that have shown repeatedly that after 14 days, provided you don't have any symptoms, after 14 days from having a positive PCR, you should be fine to stop self-isolating, because when they took samples from those patients and put them on a culture media, they did not grow. The virus was dead. It was dead nucleic acid, dead viral particles, but they will still come up positive on PCR, because PCR detects the presence of nucleic acid, DNA or RNA. It's an RNA virus. So, but it's not viable, and therefore it is not infectious. It's just like saying, okay, you're doing a test to detect the presence of dogs, for instance, and you have a test that can detect that there's a dog in the room, but it cannot detect whether or not the dog is alive. Okay, so that's a PCR test.
Right.
It can show that there's the presence of a dog, but not necessarily that the dog is alive.
Okay. Gotcha.
So that's what a PCR test is.
Final question for you, sir.
I was just going to ask why the PTF is not engaging in the power of advertising, because advertising is so key to enlightening people. And I'm not talking about going to the traditional rulers, where the traditional rulers are advertised there. The local governments, PTF should advertise there. If you advertise, the level of awareness in people will be huge. So I'm just asking why the PTF is not engaging in the power of advertising.
So we do NOI polls every week, and we poll at least 1,000 Nigerians within the country, and 1,000, we take a specific state and do 1,000 plus. And consistently, what our polls have shown is that people are aware of COVID. People are aware of COVID. More than 90% have had a radio jingle or seen a TV or seen some sort of mobilization at the grassroots level. The problem is not the knowledge. The problem is translating that knowledge to action. And when we ask them, how do you protect yourself? People know about face masks. People know about hand washing. But as I said, this is behavioral change. When it comes to COVID, we have invested in media and advertising more than possibly any other program for a long time. If you open up TV, you will hear about it. Radio, the same thing. So advert is not the problem. It's really trying to convince people that they have a risk, and that perception of risk is understood by many, and people are able to take the decision to protect themselves. It goes far beyond just advert. But to me, it's actually more about engaging people through community leaders and people that they trust.
Right.
To tell them that, yes, COVID is real, and please change your behavior so that we can all get back to normal as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you. We're speaking with the National Coordinator, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu. It was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, I know we have quite a bit of tweets. A lot of people have sent in messages on this. Obviously, from the very, very important question Waike asked, we thought advertising was a problem, but he's saying that people are aware, but because you're aware doesn't mean that you actually do what you're supposed to do. So it now goes back to the individual responsibility.
Look, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. This lady tested positive over the weekend. We got Omotola. And so I was telling, because Omotola is a famous person, and so I was telling my girl, I was telling Salome, I said, Salome, Omotola tested positive. And I don't believe.
The same Salome I spoke to that.
That you spoke to. So it is only by constant. It's not that you will do advert for.
No, Salome will not believe you. He doesn't want to believe. You can't put it in her head. Obviously, she has made a decision not to believe. The point, what I'm hearing him say is that you as a person must decide that, okay, this thing is real, and I'm going to take responsibility. The government can't force it on your head. You can't force it on your throat. Salome, no matter what you do, will still say it's not real because she has decided that it's not real.
No. She believes it's real, but she doesn't believe it is. A lot of them believe it is real. And that's what he said. People believe that, yes, the COVID is there, but that it will touch me.
There's a whole different...
So you have to... You see this thing? It is...
But I don't think advertising will solve that problem. Like, that's what I think.
I remember I told you about the AIDS one in 1986. We did not have any... We had like 3 cases of AIDS in Nigeria. Today, we are epidemic status in Nigeria because there was no advertising.
Let's take a few tweets before you round on.
Mayawa says, my mother and her sister want to test for COVID-19 as my mom has been feeling some of the symptoms, but they don't even know where to test in Ilesha. I had to tell them to just approach any major government hospitals to make inquiries. Oluwakemi Sola says, the doctor should tell us where they conduct tests in Abuja. I think all the centers should be made public. And Andrew in StarTimes says, testing should be based on how South Korea did it. Every nation on earth are looking up to South Korea. It should be cheap, accurate, and quick. Then, comes the question, what are your microbiology labs of our universities doing to help?
Roberts.
Mikey, we're going to come back to this. Let me just take a quick break. I think I have Oluchi. Oluchi, are you there? We have lost our call. Let's go on a quick break. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
take some tweets.
Thanks for staying with us. So we're going to wrap up on the issue of COVID. I know we had quite a bit of tweets. Mike, do you have some for us?
Yeah, Bilikus Mafe Fagbemi says, sadly, economic sustainability has taken priority over safety and it isn't just Nigeria that's opening up the economy again. It's become a necessity as we have been told COVID-19 will be here for a long time. We must learn to cohabit with it. Sad reality. God help us as we help ourselves. She also says, the reality is there is so much the government can do. There is no nation on earth that can afford to remain in lockdown for the rest of the year. We need to put safety and security measures in place, and citizens should comply for the sake of their own health and life.
Right. There's even this one
she has said it all.
She said random testing might not be effective if people still expose themselves to being infected after testing negative to the virus. I think the future should focus on vaccine and precautions should be taken prior to that. Emphasis should be on prevention.
I totally agree with that tweet because, yes, there's one thing of testing, but emphasis should be on prevention, how to ensure you don't even get it at all.
So your negative doesn't mean you're immune.
Well, the campaign Wike was talking about is that the publicity should be what do you take to strengthen your immune system? How do you prevent yourself? How do you protect yourself? How do you ensure that you're constantly using sanitizers?
Since we opened.
Because you've tested negative. Just like, as she said.
Since we opened, we make sure everybody wear your mask. If you don't have a mask, we are selling masks. So wear your mask. We have the wash your hands, sanitizer, everything as you enter. I won't normally go to Shrine on a Sunday unless we are playing. I went there to make sure that everything was being complied with.
I was in Magodo yesterday and somebody had passed on and there was a party, but I know there wasn't a crowd outside. So I know there were cars, but there wasn't a crowd. I saw the tents, I heard music playing. In fact, it sounded like a band. I saw caterers going in and out and I'm thinking to myself, Lagos and Sha and this party thing. But I'm sure they also complied. I'm sure they actually had face masks because there wasn't so many people. There weren't so many people there. But the important thing, life is going back to normal. But what's more important, you as a person must take full responsibility. Even if you attend a party, know the chair you're sitting on. Stay there. You can attend a party.
Don't attend a party.
When you attend the party, when you want to eat, must you not remove the mask?
You remove the mask just to eat now, and then put the mask back.
By that time that you are eating, the person that has Koro will come and stand beside you and pass it to you.
Something funny happened at the bank yesterday. Something funny. So the person attending to me didn't want people close to her because she's afraid of COVID, and rightfully so. But there was a woman who had hearing impediment, and the woman would not have it. She could not hear her through the mask. She insisted. And she was right beside me screaming. I was just minding my own business. So a lot of things that we need to put in place that we're not doing diligently.
Unfortunately, that's all we can take on the COVID updates. Now, let's move on to a health condition called aortic aneurysm. It's not a well-known disease here in Nigeria, but it is a major killer. Report has it that 8 out of 10 cases of aortic aneurysm result in death. Joining us now is a consultant interventional cardiologist, Dr. Tosin Majekodunmi. Hello, Dr. Majekodunmi. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hi, good morning. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. So tell us, what is this aortic aneurysm? What exactly is it? Where is it in the body?
Okay, so aortic aneurysms are one of those conditions that is associated with one of the things I'm sure you've talked about on your show on many occasions, which is hypertension. And it's not one of the ones we talk about because it's less common a complication. That's one of the other common complications like heart attacks, renal failure, heart failure, and things like that. An aneurysm, to answer your question directly, is an abnormal swelling in the major blood vessel that supplies the organs of the body. The two commonest sites to get them are in the abdomen and also in the chest, just where the blood vessel comes out of the heart. Those are the two areas you can get aneurysms. And the reason why this happens is because when the wall of that blood vessel is exposed to a higher than normal pressure for a long period of time, in some people, for reasons that we are not clear about, the walls become very weak and then they swell, almost like you are blowing up a balloon, and it becomes more swollen. And eventually, one of two things can happen, both of which are dangerous. One is that the balloon can burst or rupture, which obviously can be catastrophic. And the other is that the lining of the blood vessel can develop a tear in it, which can also cause complications.
Now, go ahead, Wake.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I was reading the research earlier and it said there are no symptoms. What I cannot just be going to the hospital to go and be checking if I have aneurysm. But now I feel as if I have, hearing you talk. Do you understand?
What do you
So
look out for?
what
understand.
can I do to prevent it or know that I have it? If I do, I won't have it too, by the grace of God. There are so many things
So those are two very good points. So just like hypertension, aneurysms for the vast majority
Oh no.
that you have it. So how do you decide, or how do you know to look for it, or how do you prevent it? The best way to prevent it is, in the first place, to make sure if you have high blood pressure, you treat your high blood pressure meticulously. And so, as I always try and take the opportunity to say on these occasions, you want your blood pressure to be less than 130/80 consistently. If you are taking your medication, if you have high blood pressure and you are taking medication every day very diligently, and your blood pressure is 150, you are nowhere. Your blood pressure needs to be consistently less than 130/80. In that way, you reduce your risk of having the aneurysm in the first place. Now, in some countries, they have a program of screening for abdominal aortic aneurysm. So anybody above the age of 65 or above the age of 70 with a history of hypertension, it's a very easy and actually cheap test to run. Just do an ultrasound of the abdomen and look at the aorta and see if it's swollen or not. And the reason why we screen is because in the vast majority of people, they don't have any symptoms. So if you don't look for it, the only time you'll find out you have it is when it has ruptured or when it has developed a complication and now you're in a life-threatening situation.
Okay. So you just mentioned that, when you have hypertension, you're at a high risk of having this. So how, for patients that are already managing hypertension all their lives, what exactly can they do to kind of limit this? Because I am here learning about this for the very first time, and I have a family member who is hypertensive.
Okay. So the key thing when you're hypertensive and you have this kind of, and you are worried about this kind of a problem, is really to make sure that your blood pressure is under meticulous control. So your blood pressure needs to be less than 130/80 or less. That is where you really want to be. If your blood pressure is in that area, then we know that your risk of having an aneurysm is very low, and your risk of complications is also very low. And that's really the only thing you can do. I should mention one other thing. There are some genetic conditions that can also lead to aneurysms, which are also much more rare and are not very well known in the country, but we do see examples of this. So one of them is called Marfan syndrome. These are people who are born with a weakness in the blood vessels as they come out of the body and supply all the organs of the body. And that weakness leads to swelling of the blood, causes aneurysms. It can be it's in the chest, a thoracic aneurysm. It can also mean the abdominal aortic aneurysm as well. So if there's anybody if anybody is listening who has a family member who they have said has an aneurysm, it is always a good idea for other family members to go and check and make sure that it is not a genetic thing where other family members may have the same thing. Because if you look in time and you find it when it's not caused a problem, you can save a life that way.
I wanted to ask a layman's question. The high blood pressure and hypertension are the same thing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so now, when the aneurysm has happened, how do you manage an hypertensive patient through to recovery? Is that possible?
Yes, it is possible. So I will try not to get too technical, but a number of things can happen when an aneurysm has a complication, whether it ruptures or whether it develops a tear in it, what we call a dissection. If it ruptures, then really the chances of survival depend on how extensive that rupture is. So if it is a major rupture and the whole vessel basically bursts, it is very unlikely anywhere in the world that patient is going to survive. That's the first thing. If you get a smaller rupture that is contained, then you have an opportunity to do something. And the something is either to operate emergently, or sometimes you can deal with these things without operating by putting a stent across the aneurysm to close off the aneurysm and restore the integrity of the vessel walls. The way that people can know that they may be having something that causes an aneurysm is typically abdominal pain. If it's an abdominal aortic aneurysm, people get pain in their abdomen. They will usually say it's radiating to the back. So whenever people have these kinds of symptoms and they're hypertensive and maybe a little bit elderly, it's very important that when they go to hospital, the doctors who are looking after them bear in mind the fact that this patient may be having a ruptured aneurysm, particularly if their blood pressure is low or it looks as if they are bleeding from somewhere. That's something that has to be borne in mind.
Dr. Majekodunmi, I'm really worried because we are in Nigeria, and when things happen, emergencies happen, you worry that the doctor might not even know where to start from. You know, so how, I thank you for telling us that when there's a pain towards the back, possibly the doctor can hear you today. But we as parents also worry when our children complain of tummy aches. Does it happen to children? Is it possible that kids can have this when your kids complain of tummy aches?
So the good news from that is very, very unlikely, almost impossible, that you would have a child complaining of tummy ache, which is very common, and it leads to, and it is an aneurysm that is causing it. That is extremely unlikely. The people that you would worry about this in are older people, some certainly above the age of 50, who have a history of hypertension or high cholesterol, and they complain of abdominal pain radiating to the back. That should lead the doctor and as well as the patients to be aware that could this be an aneurysm? And then there are other things the doctor will look out for, things like, is the person looking like they're bleeding when they take their blood test or check their PCV? Is it lower than you would expect? And the key thing to do in that situation is to get imaging, is to get a CT scan or an abdominal ultrasound immediately to see if this is indeed an aneurysm, because it is a medical emergency. Thoracic aneurysms are in the chest, and those patients can present with chest pain, which also radiates to the back. So those are the kind of things that these patients would complain of, that would lead the patients and the doctors to be aware that this older person, 75, he's had hypertension for 20 years, he's not very good at taking his tablets, he's now getting chest pain, he's radiating to the back. That is a warning sign that something is going on. If you pick it up in that situation, you can usually deal with it. But if you wait until it becomes a dramatic thing, patient collapses or slumps, as we say, then the chances of survival go down dramatically.
For the sake of our viewers, what is the, I know you said 130/80, you shouldn't be lower, but what is the ideal blood pressure?
And let me add to that, for the person.
The ideal blood pressure, if you go by the textbooks and sort of being very general, we say 120/80 for everybody. But of course, we are all individuals. And so you have to treat patients as individuals. So for a much older person, say somebody who's 80 or some 90 in some cases in some of my patients, I may not be aiming for them to get to 120/80. I may be more satisfied with 130 or 135. Whereas if I see a patient who's in their 40s, early 40s, for example, they have a long time to live with that blood pressure. So even if it's only a little bit elevated, it's going to be a little bit elevated for, if you are going to be, optimistic, for at least the next 50 years. They are still at high risk of they are higher risk of having complications. So for that patient, I may be more keen to get their blood pressure down to about 120/80 or thereabouts. But for a much older patient, just going by the laws of probability, they don't have so long to live with that slightly elevated blood pressure. So I may be keener to accept that and also not cause them to get the side effects of too many medications in an attempt to bring their blood pressure down.
Okay, so if you have a patient of over 60 who's consistently been on a 150 or thereabout kind of a blood pressure, is that person, even with treatment, cannot bring it below that number? Can that person, be said to be okay with that?
We would usually, for me, 60 is relatively young, and I would try very, very hard to try and get that blood pressure that is 150 down closer to 130. And sometimes you just have to try very hard. Most patients, we know you cannot get them to the blood pressure you want to on only one medication, or even two, or sometimes even three. Sometimes you need to give them 4 or 5 different medications to get that blood pressure down. But it's worth it, because given what we are discussing today in terms of aortic aneurysms, it is much, much cheaper and much, much more beneficial for the patient to have to take 5, even 6 drugs to keep the blood pressure to 130 than have to deal with a ruptured aortic aneurysm, either in the abdomen or in the chest, because that becomes a very serious and life-threatening situation. So I think
let me go
carry
a
on,
quick
please.
break. Let me go on a quick break. We'll be right back. We'll continue with you in a moment. Stay with us. I'm going away. We'll be right back.
Stay tuned. Your View will be right back. Welcome back to Your View.
Thanks for staying with us. Dr. Majekodunmi, you said that when you have that full ruptured aneurysm, it can be quite fatal.
Yes.
Could you give us an idea from the moment, when you have that partly ruptured one, the time you have, how long does somebody have to get, to be revived in the hospital? Because sometimes you get to the hospital, this is a Nigerian factor. They tell you want to do CT scan, want to do this, want to do that, and families are still running health care, they're looking for money. All that time is being lost and the patient dies. So could you give us the time frame you have when that happens? How long does the patient have to survive?
So it's very difficult to give an exact time, because whenever you have these things, until you visualize it, you don't know. But for us, a possible ruptured abdominal aortic aneurysm is a medical emergency, and that means it needs to be dealt with immediately. There is no delay that's acceptable. Now, getting a CT scan should be immediate. So once the patient hits the hospital, once it passes the doctor's mind that this patient may have a ruptured aortic aneurysm, you need to get a CT scan literally within 15 minutes. Like it's that, I'm talking about that quick. So I know that because of the unique way in which our own healthcare is funded in this country, there are a lot of barriers to being able to achieve that kind of speed in terms of, as you mentioned, finances, and availability in some cases. Not every hospital that has access to a CT scanner, much less a CT scanner that is functional 24/7. So if the patient is having the symptoms at 3 a.m., you need to get a CT scan at 3 a.m. It can't wait until 9 a.m. before you get a scan. So there are not that many hospitals that are equipped in such a fashion to be able to get the scan done, see the problem, and then once you've done the CT scan, you need a vascular surgeon or an interventional radiologist to get in there and operate, either do an open operation to deal with the problem or to take the patient to a cath lab and put in a stent graft to manage the situation. And there are only about 2 or 3 hospitals, certainly in Lagos, that can do that immediately.
Okay, obviously,
so
what you just described, Dr. Majekodunmi, I'm sorry to cut you, what you just described obviously sounds very, very far-fetched. So I think the best, we would like to maybe spend more time on prevention, not even get there at all.
Absolutely.
Because let's then talk about some lifestyle, habits of some people that, might predispose them to this, even without being hypertensive.
Because, at a point when you were talking, I tuned off. You know why? Because I just thought about all the clinics I see on the road where I take any ruptured aneurysm person there, it's goodbye.
Dead.
Yeah, so
it's goodbye. Let us be, even if I take them to maybe General Hospital, go safe, it's goodbye.
I think you make some very good points, but I think there are still, even within our environment, there are reasons for optimism. There are some hospitals, and I'll certainly include mine in that group, where if you present in a timely fashion, we can get a CT scan done within 10 minutes of you walking through the door. We can get you to the cath lab within 30 minutes and do whatever we need to do to sort out the problem. Now, I do agree that, of course, our hospital is exceptional. It is not the norm. And the vast majority of hospitals that are out there are not in the fortunate position to being able to provide these facilities.
But Dr. Majekodunmi, you said something very vital. You said if it crosses the mind of the doctor, this is Nigeria. Outside malaria and typhoid, what else are we thinking about?
It doesn't cross the mind.
It doesn't cross the mind of our doctors.
No, there is one more.
So I think that is the reason why this television show that you are doing is very important, because what we need to do is to continually raise awareness, or both on the side of the doctors and also on the side of the patient, so that it starts to cross people's minds more and more when these patients present. For example, I was in a meeting recently where we were discussing the differences between expatriates who present with heart attacks and Nigerians who present with heart attacks. So, foreigners working within the country, they have the awareness of what happens when they get chest pain. More often than not, they present to hospital in very good time. We treat them, they get better, they go home in 24 hours, no problems. Our Nigerian patients will present 2 or 3 days later when there are complications and when the possibility of a good outcome is much less. And again, it's all down to awareness. The expatriates, they know in the countries where they come from, they've been well schooled in what to do. I'm having chest pain, they know. You go to the hospital, you're having a heart attack, you go to the cath lab. Nigerians, we still don't have the awareness in that same fashion. And
Not
as we're talking about aneurysm today, we need to continue to raise awareness on the part of the patients to, when you're having abdominal pain, get to hospital immediately, get to a hospital that can do a scan immediately, and for the doctors to think about an aneurysm in an elderly patient or an older patient who is hypertensive.
Dr. Majekodunmi, I would like you to talk about issues of insurance for this kind of illnesses, because Nigerians are not just unaware of, they are very much aware, but most Nigerians are discouraged because if you think of the cost of it alone, some people will sit at home and pray first before they go and.
So I'll let you answer the insurance question in a moment. Let me take this call from Yakub. Yakub, are you there?
Mariah, I'm there.
Thanks for calling. Go ahead,
good morning
please.
to you, and then good morning to Doctor. Mariah, I don't have much to say. I just want to give kudos to you and thank you and the management of TFC, because this program is now come to international, because look at the people that you always brought on to tell us some certain things. This morning, I was just listening to the doctor. In fact, God will bless you, doctor, because there's a lot of things that we don't even know that is happening to us. Look at the hypertension that everybody will just think is just hypertension, and then we take 1 or 2 drugs. And then this morning, doctor made us to know that you can even take almost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 drugs to bring this thing down to normal. I've never had that in my life. Thank you. God bless you once again.
Thank you. Thank you. So going to the issue of insurance.
Insurance for this.
Yeah, so the issue of insurance is a vitally important one. So I trained in the UK, where there's a National Health Service and a National Health Insurance System that funds it. And it just changes fundamentally the way in which myself as a doctor is able to practice medicine, because it just allows anybody that comes through the door, you just treat them. You're not worried about how you have to pay for the scan. You're not worried about how to pay for the consumables you need to treat the patient. You can just do what you need to do, knowing that, everything will get paid for. We know in Nigeria it's not like that. We know that there are attempts to set up insurance schemes, but the truth is most of these insurance schemes reimburse at a very low rate. So they will cover malaria and typhoid, as a lot of people are aware of, maybe gastroenteritis. But when we talk about the kind of things we're talking about, somebody presents with an abdominal aortic aneurysm, needs to go to the cath lab emergently, needs to get a stent graft. A stent graft can cost up to 2 million naira, 2.5 million naira, just for the stent. Just the stent. You haven't paid for anything else, just the graft that you put in to close off the aneurysm and save the patient's life. That alone can cost 2.5 million naira. Now, there are not many insurance schemes within the country that will cover, even if you are paying your premiums, that will cover you for that treatment at that price, because they will say it's too expensive. And so this is a problem that needs to be dealt with at local and federal levels, about how we talk about how we are going to fund healthcare in a sustainable fashion in this country.
I think it's time for you to let us go. I mean, it's time for us to let you go, because I don't know what else to discuss.
There is this
go ahead, Waike.
Tweet. Kalesi, she says, my mom suffered brain aneurysm around this time last year. We found out miraculously and were able to manage it on time before it ruptured. I started learning and talking more about this. No one I know knows about aneurysm or and that hypertension can cause it. So what I'm thinking...
Absolutely correct.
Yeah. What I'm thinking is
I think what we take from this, YK, from this conversation...
It's an educative program now.
So what I think I've taken so far is that it's important, no matter what, to ensure you bring down your blood pressure to below 138/90, according to what you told us.
Absolutely.
Once you get
130/80. 130/80.
Okay, 130/80. That's the right, the numbers to get, so that no matter what happens, you wouldn't get an aneurysm.
Correct.
So,
reduce your risk of having aneurysm as much as possible.
I wanted to ask, people younger than you, because you keep referring to the elderly, people younger, like in their 40s, can they get aneurysms as well?
So they can, but generally they will have aneurysms not because of their hypertension, because generally they haven't lived with their hypertension long enough for it to manifest as an aneurysm. They will tend to have some of the genetically inherited collagen disorders that can lead to aneurysms. Like I mentioned briefly, Marfan syndrome, this is very rare. People with bicuspid aortic valves, people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, people with Loeys-Dietz syndrome. These are all very rare syndromes, but these are the ones that if you see an aneurysm in a younger patient, 20, 30, maybe even 40 years of age, it may be due to one of those conditions rather than because of hypertension.
Okay,
50 and 16.
we have to let you go, Dr. Majekodunmi. I think you've given us enough bad news this morning. But we'll
I hope the good news is that if you treat your blood pressure to less than 130/80, the risk of any of these bad things happening is very, very low. And that, I think, is the good news. And it is very achievable.
Fantastic.
The drugs are out there. It can be done.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We'll be speaking with the consultant, interventional cardiologist, Dr. Tosin Majekodunmi. Wow. They say, already.
No, it's just me. I'm going to, like, because I've heard this, I'm even going to go and invest in the blood pressure machine, so I can even, I don't have to be going to hospital to take my blood pressure.
My people, so please,
blood pressure.
Aside from we pray, prayer is important. Let us pray that we won't get to this point. Prayer is important. But at the same time, let's just ensure that we keep our blood pressure normal. I think that's the lesson we're taking from this show.
120
which is
over 80.
130, he said, over 80.
No, 130, that is starting to get high.
Yes.
If you have been diagnosed with high blood pressure, 130 over 80. But if you are normal, it should be 120 over 80.
On that note, we end the show. Have a fabulous day. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.